Today, we're looking at Krishna's Dark Chocolate. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Krishna's Dark Chocolate is a brown ink, which you would hope with it being called chocolate. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. Had to check my pen. I then put it into a Levenger True Writer with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography. And I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water. 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this kind of pink and light red that pushes its way up. Then the brown comes in as lighter and obviously working its way darker. The one on the right is done wrong. I let it dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And you can't tell the difference between the two of them, which means for me, I expect that there's zero resistance that this ink would have. None at all. It's just gonna have problems. Speaking of resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let that smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, we see that it's actually doing a bit better than expected from the chromatography. Yes, it feathers out. Yes, it does spread, but it doesn't become unreadable. I'm not sure that I would use this if I needed to in a note-taking situation, but it looks like you could use it. Water completely reactivates it, starts pulling it entirely off the page. We start seeing white of the paper coming through where that dot of water was. Interestingly here, pen flush does much of what water did, but not as much. Pen flush doesn't seem to be as effective at getting this ink out as the water was. It still leads me to say that water's the way to go to get this ink out of your pen. Bleach, as would be expected, completely annihilates it. Gone. Please don't use bleach to get this out of your pen. It doesn't need that much. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Krishna's Dark Chocolate has a viscosity of 2.4, which makes it very normal and very close to average. Now, to find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Krishna's Dark Chocolate has an average dry time of 12 seconds, which makes it a faster drying ink. Not fast, but faster. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I got this ink in bottle form back when I had to order about 30 of these bottles from India before they actually had come to the States. And dark chocolate's not normally a color I go after, but, you know, when you're ordering one of every they got, you go ahead and you give it a shot. And this one was a pleasant surprise. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Man, I was going to say that nib looked huge, just wasn't all the way in there. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and beautiful, beautiful color variation the whole way through. Here I'm making noises in the background so it's nice and distracting. Beautiful shading the whole way through. Very nice shading. The extra fine gives us no bleeding, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and look at that shading. It's great. This is a thick ink to use. I don't know how to describe it, other than people that are dealing with fountain pen ink sort of get used to that feeling of a thick ink when they're writing versus a thin ink. This is definitely a thick ink. 7 seconds to dry with the extra fine. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and shading. Tons of shading the whole way through. Great. 10 seconds to dry. This stuff dries pretty quick. Now, when we look at the Scrubby lies. Both the Scrubbies say we don't get any color variation, but in the writing we definitely did. The smear test lets us know that we would be able to recover this if we smeared it. So I go to Tomoe River, which gives us no bleeding and ghosting. It gives us ghosting. It's Tomoe River. It comes with the package. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading. It's lost here. That was me being sloppy. We lose the shading with the Tomoe River. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade, 12 seconds to dry, although it looks a little darker a tone than we got with the 1.1. And we move a little darker a tone again with the medium, which has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade, 17 seconds to dry. The Scrubby says we get no color variation, and we got no color variation. The smear test says you don't get to recover it, even with this thick ink, because you still wrote it on Tomoe River. You don't get to recover Tomoe River. So rodeo paper gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and some nice shading throughout all of the writing. It's a nice, lighter, it's like a milk chocolate look. It says dark chocolate. With the 1.1 that looks like milk chocolate. It's nice. Yum. Extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and yes, shading. We get the milk chocolate to dark chocolate mix. Look at Over. Look at Lazy. At Fox. It is fantastic. Spot on. It is really a great. I'm glad I have a bottle of this because I like brown inks. And on the medium, 10 seconds to dry. And on the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We lose a lot of that shading. When it gets really dark, it really turns, I called it a Hershey's chocolate. So on a broad nib, it's like a Hershey's chocolate brown. It's a nice dark brown with a wet nib. But it's like a Hershey's chocolate bar. Unfortunately, with that wet nib, you don't get the color variation. But if you want to make people drool when they're looking at your writing, then that's what you got to do, Makes everything go away when they drool all over the paper. 14 seconds to dry with the medium. Looking at the Scrubby, the extra fine shows us tons of color variation, and it's in the writing, and the medium shows us none, and there was none in the writing. Now the smear test lets me think I would recover both of these if I did smear while I was writing. Such a great color. Have to test it on different tone paper. Testing it on the yellow rhodea gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. So what's going on with the color difference? It's a thicker ink. And because it feels even thicker to put in the pen and to write with, I think that affects some of what we see with how strong that color stays. It does have areas where it looks a little bit lighter and areas where it looks a little bit darker. So the yellow paper actually brings the color variation in some cases more. Like the 1.1, it has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and the shading looks like it goes from an even lighter brown to an even darker brown. So it looks like it brought the extremes farther away. They were here, and now they're here on the yellow paper. Extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We did lose some of the shading here. So in this case, we lost some of the shading, but when it's there, it seems a little wider. The Quick looks great. Over looks great. Lazy is a very dark brown, not as dark as we're going to see with the medium. 10 seconds to dry. Now medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, loss of shade. 14 seconds to dry. The Scrubby on the yellow tells us we're going to get some color variation on the extra fine, and we do. The medium shows us we're not going to get any color variation, and we didn't. And I believe we would be able to salvage this if we smeared while we were writing. So once again, testing that hazel paper. That hazel paper comes in a notebook like this, and if you go ahead and order from them in India and you go find these notebooks, this paper performs fantastic. Truly fantastic. I'd have bought a lot more of them. This is the last one that I have. I'd have bought a lot more of their notebooks if I knew how good they were going to be, because they were very inexpensive. The cost of the notebook itself, you got to go through the whole shipping to get it here, and the 2-month wait, and that all aside, the cost of the actual notebook was very little. So hazel paper, No bleeding, no ghosting. Amazing. I'm just thinking that, I see this. I see this paper. It's a little toothy. And I think, moleskin, it can be done. All right, 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Yes, it gives us shading. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. And yes, it gives us shading too. At 4 seconds to dry. It dries so fast and we still get plenty of shading. Just look at the jumps to 4. Those are both extra fine. Look at the color change that's going on in over or in quick. Now we get to the medium, and ignoring where my thumb goes because it always seems to show more shading right there, the medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we lose the shading with the broader, wetter pens. 5 seconds to dry with the medium. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both show us the color variation that we got. The extra fine shows us that we go from a mid to dark brown. The medium shows us nothing. Exactly what we got in the writing. The smear test, I believe you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing, which is exactly what you need to know with a pocket-sized notebook. And that's what I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Krishna's dark chocolate, I would prefer to find an ink that complements that color on the page. Being brown, I think orange. And what orange? I think Diamine's orange. Because as a color, it's orange. No, it's a very nice orange. I just like that it's a color named for exactly what it is. It's a good pairing though. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. I keep seeing you and you're bugging me. That was a microphone. So what do I think of Krishna's dark chocolate? As a color, it is Hershey's chocolate. It is great. Chocolate lovers, this color is for you. Now, as far as the writing samples, smaller nibs seem to bring better shading and a better color of ink than broader, wetter nibs, which is something to think about when you're choosing what ink to put in your pen. And that's what I got. Thanks for watching.